Boise State, the Mountain West Conference champion, does get that automatic bid taken on Memphis.
Yeah, this is a great matchup. Ken Palm has it at 1. That's where you're looking at the line as well. So I think, Memphis is a slight underdog here against Boise State. And as you mentioned, Stormy, which Memphis is going to show up? Interestingly enough, South Point has Memphis as a 2.5-point favorite. So you're going to see a couple discrepancies. I think DraftKings opened it up 1.5, so you're seeing some action in the market for Memphis. And I think that makes sense because look at how Memphis ended the season. They swept Houston in the regular season, ultimately lost today pretty convincingly to Houston, to the Cougars. But they beat SMU. They really started to kind of figure things out there. So you look at this team, all the pomp and circumstance around them with the Amani Bates coming in. Obviously, he is not playing anymore for Memphis, dealing with injury. But Jalen Duren is a stud. So, yeah, I want to see what Memphis can do here. Boise State is playing as well as anybody. Obviously, going into Thomas and Mack and winning the Mountain West. So I think this is a phenomenal matchup. And I think for Gonzaga, in my opinion, they're hoping that Boise State can pull the slight upset over Memphis.
West Region, Gonzaga versus Georgia State. I'll put it very simply. Do you give Georgia State a chance here, Amal Shah, to stay within a big number like this? Right now, this is the interesting game, too, because some spots there was a pretty big discrepancy in terms of the opener. DraftKings opened in the range of 26.5, 27. Other spots open, I think it was a South Point as low as like 23 in that range. We've evened down at about 24.5 in favor of Gonzaga. But on paper, we're talking about a 201st ranked offense versus the 7th best defense in the country. You're talking about the 114th ranked defense versus the best offense in the country. There's a size advantage for Gonzaga. The question is, does Gonzaga near the end call the dogs off, no pun intended, and just want to get out of here and on to the next round?
Dabo Sweeney had one of my favorite lines of all time. Them boys are in trouble. And I can tell you right now, the Panthers are in a serious world of hurt here. This Gonzaga team is going to be a real challenge. Just not only you mentioned the offensive and defensive efficiency, JVT, but to me, where the real challenge is when you play Gonzaga in Arizona and you walk out in that court, you've never seen size like this.
Yes.
Last night I was at the Pac-12 tournament and you go, God, Arizona's got some big dudes. And when you look at having to shoot over them and you're Georgia State and you come from a midweight major and the 4 is about 6'7", and that's probably rounding out based on what the SID is saying.
Yep.
It's going to be a real challenge here.
It's funny. I got to go. I took my wife to go see Colorado State UNLV when they played at the Thomas and Mack, and she was amazed. We were sat courtside. She was amazed by watching all of them up close. And I go, you see all those guys out there? She's like, yeah. I'm like, not a single one of them is going to touch an NBA court. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, trust me. I'm like, this is like mid-major. They're good basketball players. But to your point, some of these guys that you're going to see out there with the Gonzagas and the Arizonas of the world, this is a whole different animal. And, Ken Palm does a great job. They track average heights. Just to give you an idea of the difference here between these two teams, Gonzaga average height, they're 8th in the country, 78.7 inches, their average height. Georgia State right now, 325th in the country. Like, that's a really big difference. All right, let's talk about UConn, New Mexico State. DraftKings, Circa, and South Point all open UConn as a 7-point favorite. On the screen right now, 6.5s starting to appear in this matchup. Two slow-paced teams meeting here. New Mexico, 223rd in the country in tempo. UConn, 291st. Aggies, of course, prioritize rim protection and interior protection. 42.6% allowed in terms of the interior shooting for opponents here for New Mexico State. So what do you do here? Because I think it's a pretty interesting matchup. Because if you look at New Mexico State, they're a poor shooting team that relies on guys like Johnny McCants to score inside. UConn's the 5th best interior defense in the country. So this is kind of contrasting styles meeting with another. They're going to be slow, but in terms of offensive strengths, New Mexico State might be in a matchup where they're kind of butting their head against the wall.
Yeah, this is a game where Timmy Allen and Jabari Rice have to play well if New Mexico State's going to have a chance. You mentioned that interior there. I think Sonogo is terrific and underrated for what he can do for UConn. RJ Cole will really dictate the terms of this game for Connecticut, and how he plays is how the Huskies are going to go. I give him an edge at the guard position. I like UConn here. What's the number you said?
So open up 7. It's down to 6.5 right now.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about laying 6.5 here. I would be more apt to have taken the 7 with New Mexico State. I didn't realize it was that high. I thought it was probably going to be 5.5. But this is a game where this Aggies team is very much a live dog. If you're going to bet them plus the points, I think they have a chance. Because if UConn struggles to shoot the ball, which they have at times, I think there's an opportunity here for New Mexico State.
Yeah, and New Mexico State, not a team that'll force a lot of turnovers either. So if you can keep this in, because one of the things that kind of bugs me with teams, guard play is always very important, obviously, especially in the tournament. But if you're a team that turns the ball over and doesn't turn the ball over a lot, and that's New Mexico State, 313th in the country offensively in turnover rate, 271st in defensive turnover rate. So you're coughing an apple up, but you're not also getting those possessions back, and that can be bothersome against a team like UConn. By the way, we should note, too, as these totals come up, this total, about 133 across the board, we'll call that the consensus number, 133, and the 132.5 are also out there between these two as well. Arkansas and Vermont. This is a pretty fascinating matchup, man. Which team dictates tempo? Arkansas, they run. They want to run, and they will get up and down the court. 28th in tempo, 44th in average possession length in the country. Vermont, agonizingly slow. We're talking about a team that's 288th in tempo, 270th in possession length of them all. However, just because they're slow, it's like that Virginia team that won the national championship, right? That was an insanely efficient offense. It was slow, and people thought there was a low-scoring offense, and that wasn't the case. Vermont, the same thing here, 44th in offensive efficiency, despite being one of the slowest teams in the country.
They're terrific, especially their two-point shooting. This team is really efficient inside the arc. Catamounts team is good. They're dangerous. They're experienced. If Arkansas gets off to the type of start they got against Texas A&M with J.D. Note getting in foul trouble, I think Note picked up his third personal foul in the first half. Musselman's team's going to be in trouble here. But look, from a talent standpoint, athleticism standpoint, it's going to be a challenge for Vermont. JBT, give me that number one more time on this one.
This one right now, 5.5 with a total of about 140, and that's pretty much where it opened. 5.5. Now, one spot, Circa, where we're sitting right now, opened a little bit higher at 6, but we're now 5.5 across the board in favor of Arkansas.
Yeah, I think with that number, I would lean towards the Razorbacks here. I think their athleticism and what they're able to do. This team's got some talent. Make no mistake about it. They're well tested. They had that hiccup against A&M, but I think this team can be dangerous. The Catamounts have been outstanding. But I just don't know if Davis can be as effective inside against a team like Arkansas, who's got athleticism and length. 2 points to make on this game that stuck out to me. One, 3-point line, I think, is going to be the most important aspect of this game. Catamounts, 43.1% of their attempts come from 3-point range. They shoot the ball well. Arkansas only takes 34% of their attempts from deep, and they're a really poor shooting team. They shoot 30.7%. So the difference of the 3-point shooting is going to matter. And does Vermont's rebounding dominance play here against Arkansas Mall? They're the best defensive rebounding team in the country, but Arkansas top 85 in both categories. I would defend it this way. Yeah. There's no Oscar Tshiebwes in their league.
Well, and that's that is a good point. Like when you look at some of these numbers for some of these teams, especially some of these teams like Vermont, the dominance in which they have shown, this is a step up in competition for them. They're a very well coached team, and some of that translates, but not all of it.
Think about this real quick. They played UMBC yesterday. They were a 17-point favorite in the conference championship game. I mean, it tells you how weak the league was overall in terms of what they faced off. I think they were in the America East. To me, though, I think Arkansas's talent will be the difference in this game. But when you look at the Catamounts, extremely well coached, they play very well fundamentally.
Texas Tech and Montana State. Big size discrepancy here. Starting Montana State point guard Xavier Bishop, very good player, but listed at 5'8". And you talk about it, right? I think they lie about the heights. I'm going to assume that maybe he's 5'8" in shoes. One dude on that roster that's over 6'8", that'd be a Jabril Bello. So if you look at this, size is going to be a problem. Texas Tech, pretty solid team. And they start a starting lineup of 6'5", 6'6", 6'8", and 6'7". So there's some going to be size here. But what I'm curious about here, Maul, is Montana State operating offensively. Red Raiders, 344th in opponent three-point rate. They allow teams to shoot three-pointers, but it's because they're so good on the interior, and a lot of those three-point shots are end-of-the-shot clock, desperation shots. They get something off. But Montana State can shoot the ball relatively well, and I think this comes down to staying within this number. Is Montana State going to have a good shooting night and stay within this? And to be fair, Texas Tech has been less than impressive away from home as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Montana State is the team shooting 36% from beyond the arc. They really can get it done from a variety of different guys here, and I think that'll be key for them. This Texas Tech team, the way they defend, that's going to be the real challenge here for this Montana State offense, because they can cause some serious problems. I think they're going to have a hard time in this one. I don't like this number, 16.5. Definitely wouldn't lay it with the Red Raiders. I'd be more apt to take it with Montana State, but I can't do that either, because I feel like when you go against a defense like this, it would not shock me at all to see on Friday if you see Texas Tech 66, Montana State 48 or something like that.
Yep, and two, right now, because this did open up, as you mentioned, in that 16 range. DraftKings opened 16.5. Circa 15, South Point 15.5. Dominating number now is 15.5 across the board with a total right now of 129.5. So the side, at least when DraftKings opened, did seem a little high. Market came in, bet that down a little bit. So now sitting in that 15.5 range. And one last point here to speak on the struggles for Texas Tech away from home. 5-5 ATS in true road games, 2-4 ATS in neutral site games. So Texas Tech have been very good in Lubbock, one of the strongest home courts in the country, but not so much when playing in foreign or neutral territory. Michigan State taking on Davidson is pretty intriguing. So the opener, Davidson, some spots, a 1.5 point favorite. South Point open 1.5. Circa open 1. DraftKings open pick. So in that range right now on the board of all, we're looking at Davidson. Let's see, I got that first number here. I've got right now 2.5 in favor of Michigan State at some spots, and this is the cool part about some of these numbers. You see that 1.5 there. There's 1.5 at DraftKings. There's 2.5 at another shop, and there's 1 out there as well. So this is a wide-ranging number now in favor of Michigan State. But I'll give you the floor of what you expect of the Spartans, who were a little down the stretch of the regular season.
Yeah, you're being kind. I thought this team was horrific at times.
Yep.
They're just not great offensively. They don't have that consistency. That's the one issue that I have with this team. But they have talent. We saw them play extremely well in the second half against Wisconsin, holding off the Badgers. They're actually rallying from a 4-point deficit. To me, when I look at this Davidson team, terrific shooting team. But there's a big difference when you go from that mid-major level in the A-10 when you face off against a team like Richmond, who doesn't necessarily have the height at every position that you're going to see out of Michigan State. Mm-hmm. This is going to be interesting to see how this Davidson team performs. Remember Lawyer, he's a Michigan State transfer, played for Tom Izzo, transfers down to Davidson, leads the nation in free throw shooting percentage at 93. It's had a tremendous year. But now you're going up against a team that can really challenge you on the interior and on the perimeter defensively. I'm not going to touch this game, JV team, but I lean with Sparty just based on the way Tom Izzo's teams always perform in the tournament. And then they have a huge athletic advantage in this one, and they're going to have an advantage from a height standpoint.
Yeah, I like Davidson a little bit. I didn't play this, and you mentioned being horrific for the Spartans. So they're 53rd in defensive efficiency, but we brought this point up earlier. Make sure you look at conference play, make sure you look at recent form. So while they might be 53rd in defensive efficiency on the season, Michigan State, their efficiency dropped in conference play to 104.5. And if you look at some of the recent losses, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio State, defensive ratings of 120, 119.9, 125.7, 122.9. They were atrocious on the defensive end at times, Michigan State, and that continued all the way through their loss to Purdue just this past Saturday. So something to keep an eye on there. But Michigan State, if they're going to be good, limit the turnovers, which have been a problem for Izzo teams because they like to get up and down the court, but also play better defensively.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. The one thing I'd push back with is this. When you look at their schedule and the games that they've lost at Purdue, at Ohio State, at Michigan, at Iowa, losing at home to Illinois, that's just over the last about 10, 12 games that they've played. I would contend that you're playing a top 25 team almost every night. These are tougher teams to play on the road. For me, I love athleticism and length. It's so hard to simulate shooting over length. That's a real challenge. We'll see how Davidson handles that.
Duke, Cal State, Fullerton. I'm actually really interested in this game. Some spots opened it as high as 20 in favor of Duke. DraftKings opened it at 18, Circa at 18 as well, and South Point at 17. Cal State Fullerton's going to be intriguing, mainly because, one, we get the Duke side of things where we're talking about the Blue Devils coming into this 0-4 ATS in their last 4 games of all, an average of 82.7 points per game allowed, a defensive rating of 119.9 over those 4 games, so that's not very good. And while Cal State Fullerton's not a dominant offensive team, Humans mentioned it, they have some efficient shooters, but also really good team at getting to the free throw line. 48th in free throw rate. They shoot 76% at the line as a team. Duke was a pretty good defensive team in terms of being able to defend without fouling, but this is a team that's going to press the issue. And while there might be a length and massive advantage in the front court here, the Titans are going to try to get these bigs in trouble for Duke, and that might be a problem.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they can do that. Then I think they got a great chance. When you look at the Titans, their top 4 scorers, they're all 78% or better at the free throw line. Yep. It makes a huge difference. The problem is when you look at a guy like Williams inside in that length, you are not seeing anybody remotely close to that in the Big West. But this is a high number, and right now the way Duke has played, this reminds me of go back to when Kyrie came back from injury for the tournament. Yeah. People thought they'd be able to flip the switch. They weren't able to do it, and I kind of feel that way about this team. Banchero's been outstanding all year long, but for whatever reason, there's something amiss with this team. They're going to get through this game, but how far can they go from there? Fullerton, give them a ton of credit. They've competed all year long, and you mentioned that free throw discrepancy in terms of how effective they've been at the line. They're going to need that one if they're going to have a chance in this one.
Yeah, you mentioned the discrepancy in terms of what you'll see in terms of personnel. Fullerton really doesn't have the bodies. Paolo Banchero, 6'10", skilled like a guard. And then, of course, Trevor Keel, 6'4", 221. Yeah. Like, Fullerton doesn't have a dude bigger than Vincent Lee, who's 6'8", 230. So, like, that's from a body, just a pure body perspective, it's going to be a little bit of a mismatch here for CU Fullerton.
Yeah, that's a concern I have. But, again, the number being as big as it is could be a different scenario. You know, when you get up by 12 at halftime, the effort in the second half doesn't necessarily equate to what it was in the first half.
Get prepared for all the madness with VEASAN's tournament betting guide, daily best bet emails, plus full access to VEASAN through April 5th for only $19 at VEASAN.com/madness.